morning, everyone. Welcome to Wealthy Wednesday. Hope you're having a great week. Today, I want to talk a little bit about Bitcoin, and I specifically want to talk to the women in my age group, so those who are over 50, to demystify it a little bit, take away some of the fear that is surrounding Bitcoin. Whether you get into it or not is completely up to you. I would just like people to make their decision based on the facts, not on fear. Okay, because there are incredible opportunities for you if this is something you're interested in. So, my aim today is to talk to the people who have ever thought, it sounds interesting, but, it's not for people like me, or, it's too complicated, or it seems too risky, or it's too techy, or, it's too volatile. I'm going to address all of those things and just sort of educate you a little bit more around it so that, like I said earlier, you can make a decision based on the facts, not on the fear. And if you've still got questions, by all means, come and ask me. And if you do know someone who is into Bitcoin, and go and ask them, because people have got a lot of knowledge around this. People have been doing it for a long time. And it's just like anything, when the internet first came out, we're all just like, oh, that's all a bit too techy, that don't understand it. What if somebody does blah, 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 blah. All right. And now it's part of our everyday life. I can't imagine not having the internet. Okay. So sort of same. All right. So you don't need to be a computer genius to get into Bitcoin. You don't have to trade in markets as well. You don't have to do day trading. That is one way of doing that with Bitcoin, Forex shares, all that sort of thing. It's really stressful. I don't do that, okay, because it stresses me out too much. My husband, he loves it, on the other hand, okay. So to get into Bitcoin, you don't have to trade. You don't have to be watching markets. You don't have to be watching charts. What I want to give you today is really just a basic understanding and a strategy that can make a massive difference to your future. Because at the end of the day, and I think this hit me hard last year when everything sort of changed for me and I did lose two incomes. It's like, well, I'm getting on a little bit in life here, and, what am I going to do? Am I actually prepared for the future? And I found that a lot of women in my age group were very similar in that. It's like, okay, well, we've worked all our lives, but are we actually prepared? Are we going to be able to retire before we're, 150? So getting into Bitcoin was something that I was interested in for a long time, getting into that crypto space, because I wanted to be able to create something where my money was working for me and I didn't have to do anything, basically. I had to set it up. There's the opportunity then where you can expand on and do lots of other things, but I wanted something where it was really simple, it was easy, and the risk was relatively low as well, because that's a big fear, isn't it? I'm going to put money in and I'm going to lose money. So I don't know if you guys heard the news yesterday. The Australian market lost $100 billion, got wiped off the market on Monday, I think it was. And that actually had a huge impact on people's super. Okay. Now, we don't think of super as being risky because we have been conditioned to go, right, you set up your super, it just works away. It'll be, you have to decide whether you want a balanced fund or whether you want a high risk, low risk, all of that sort of stuff. You pretty much set and forget, and you don't look at it. If you did look at it, you would know that your super balance goes up and down a lot, okay, because that's how the markets work. But we don't look at that. We know it's for a long-term thing. It's like a set and forget. And that is the strategy, I guess you could call it, that I have for Bitcoin as well. Because if anyone's been watching Bitcoin, you'll know that it's very volatile. It goes up and down a lot. And if you're doing day trading, that's when it's really stressful. But if you look at it as a long-term view in a similar vein as you do your super, it's it takes away a lot of that stress and pressure. Okay, because if you looked at Bitcoin from when it started, so in 2009, where it was it was so cheap it wasn't even funny, and then even in the last few years, so about 2017. Anyway, I'm not going to quote figures because I don't have them, but it's gone from basically cents for one Bitcoin to the peak it hit earlier this year was $100,000 for one Bitcoin. It's now sitting around that 80,000 mark, and it's going to just keep sort of fluctuating around that. But that is a relatively short amount of time for incredible, incredible growth. And if the people who got in early, or even, in the last 10 years, they have had a massive growth in that, because it's like a set and forget sort of thing. Okay. Same as your super. But if you look at the returns you're getting from something like Bitcoin versus super, Bitcoin just blows it out of the park. Your super, as much as we need it and we want it, you should actually take a little bit more interest in it as well, just as a side note, and make sure it's doing what you need it to do. And if it's not, then do something about it. Okay. Don't just accept that what they tell you is okay, because yes, it's fine, but there is better. All right. So a lot of the other fears around Bitcoin is, I don't understand it. It's risky. It can be hacked, actually, and lost. The reason Bitcoin can be lost, it's actually on what we call a decentralized network. So a decentralized network means that nobody is in control of it. What we have right now with the banking system, with everything basically, is on a centralized network. And it can be easily hacked. I'm sure either you or someone was involved in when, there was Optus got hacked. There was one of the health funds got hacked. Lots of things get hacked. People's bank accounts get hacked. I hear that a lot. My card got hacked. I had to get new cards. It's a huge inconvenience, and, that whole privacy thing. So the centralized system is very, very susceptible to hacking. On a decentralized network, which is where Bitcoin and cryptocurrency lives, it's incredibly hard to hack that system, because everything is sort of spread out across a massive network. Okay. And so they use something called a blockchain. And I'll just very briefly tell you, a blockchain is basically like, it's a digital ledger. And if you think about in the old days, we would write a page, 3 cows in, 2 horses out, and bale hay, whatever. So we'd have our ledger of the ins and outs. And when you fill up a page, think of that like filling up a block on a blockchain. Okay. So one page is like one block of information. When that block is full, you start a new page, you start a new block, and those 2 blocks are linked together. Okay. And this is where it gets really secure, in that each block then gets linked to the next one to form the chain. So this is where the blockchain reference comes from. But this block is linked to this block. This one's linked to this one. This block has got nothing to do with this block. So to hack this decentralized network, it's like you've got 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle, and you've got one piece in 1,000 different boxes with 1,000 other pieces, and you've got to find all the pieces and put them together. It is incredibly hard to hack. It has never actually been hacked. Okay. So in that sense, it is safe. And there's another level of safety that you can have where you move your Bitcoin or your crypto into a decentralized wallet. The reason people lose their crypto is because they don't understand how decentralized wallets work. So that's just education. Okay. And education is everywhere. So what happens with a decentralized wallet, you are the one that holds the keys to that. You get, I'm not going into too much detail, but you essentially are the one who is responsible for that. If you lose your keys, there's no reset password, okay? There's no way to get it back. So that's why people lose stuff, because they don't understand what they're holding. It's not like if you lose your password at the bank or you need to reset your PIN. The bank holds your keys. And because they hold the key, they can also lock you out. Okay, so the decentralized network is actually very safe. And yes, there are people out there who are doing the wrong things with scams. They're doing the wrong things with the centralized system as well. Okay, so this is where education, you don't have to know it inside out, but you do have to have an understanding, and you do need to surround yourself with people who have more of an understanding, who you know, like, and trust. Okay, it's really, really important because this is your money, and I get it. You have to feel comfortable with it. And this is where the onus is on you as well to make sure that you do your education, you do your due diligence as well. Okay. And the other thing I hear often is, well, it's too late. It's never too late. It's never too late to start. All right. The more we leave it, the longer we leave it, yes, the less time we have. However, get in now if you can. It's one of those things, don't keep putting it off. They say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. It's the same with anything like this. Start now and start making changes, because at the end of the day, this is your future. Okay. All right. So with crypto and stuff, it did used to be a little bit of the Wild West, but it's becoming more mainstream. Okay, more big companies are getting on board the crypto train. Okay, and specifically Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like the granddaddy of crypto. It's known as digital gold. It's incredibly safe, and it's going to keep its value because there is a limited supply of it as well. All right, there's a finite amount of Bitcoin, which means it will increase in value. It's like anything where there is a limited supply of. It's like rare artwork, or it's like I don't know, the baseball cards that they used to collect. There is a limited supply, which means the value goes up. Okay, with our current system, governments are just printing money like there's no tomorrow. And this is where inflation has gotten out of control. And, we're talking about billions and trillions of dollars. It's just mind blowing. It's gotten out of control. Anyway, I'm sort of getting a little bit off track on that. But what I'm saying is that Bitcoin is becoming more widely accepted. Okay, PayPal, BlackRock, Starbucks, MasterCard, you can do things with Bitcoin. El Salvador, you can pay for your coffee with Bitcoin in El Salvador. You've got the choice of using US dollars or Bitcoin. Okay, governments, the US government, talking a lot about buying up Bitcoin. El Salvador is how they got their country out of debt, was through Bitcoin. Okay, banks, they invest in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Okay, major institutions are getting on board, which means it's more widely accepted. Okay, so what does that mean for you? It just means that to get into it is going to be something that is relatively safe. And there are very low risk ways and beginner friendly ways to get involved where you don't have to invest a lot of money. And I'll touch on that very briefly towards the end in what I do, in case you're interested in what I do. But there are ways to do it, okay? So, what I said before, with the scarcity, that limited supply of Bitcoin, that is why the value is going to keep going up. All right. Think of it like gold. Back in the day, the US dollar was tethered to gold. So it kept its value. You couldn't print more money than there was gold. And then they did away with that, and now inflation has gone out of control. So it is becoming easier to buy and store Bitcoin. It's, like I said before, it's on a decentralized system. So it's not controlled by any one government. It is very transparent. You can see transactions on the blockchain. So everything is legitimate as well. And when I say you can see transactions, you're not seeing detailed private information from specific people, but you are seeing the transactions. Okay. So it's not, I guess where I'm going with all of this is that it's not a trend anymore. It's not this new wacky thing. There is a legitimate shift in it to it becoming more mainstream. Okay. Now, why am I saying that it's a good option for women over 50? Well, in my instance, it's planning for a future where I know that I'm going to be looked after. Okay. A husband is not a backup plan. When everything went pear shaped for me and I lost my income, I was very fortunate. I have Matt and he's got a good job and we had some savings and that was okay. Everything didn't sort of turn to complete poo. But that your partner is not a backup plan. So what if something happens to Matt? What if, you know, we separate? We're not going to separate. But these are the things. What if something happens? So I wanted to have something where I knew that regardless of what happened, I would be okay. Okay. I didn't want to have to start over and create a new business and do all of that sort of thing. I just didn't want to do that. And at the end of the day, if I did do that, is it a business that I could then sell or is it dependent on me? And if it was dependent on me, I didn't want to do that either. Okay. So it was important to me that I put something in place where I could have my money working for me without regardless of what I did. So whether I got up in the morning or not, I was still making money. Okay. Now, the traditional way to buy Bitcoin is to trade your money. Okay. So if you've got $1,000 and you then want to buy Bitcoin, you then trade your dollars for Bitcoin and then you keep it. Okay. Now, that is one way to do it. And that is fine. The downfall with that, though, is that if you want more Bitcoin, you have to spend more money. That makes sense, right? If you want to increase your Bitcoin store, you have to spend more money. So this is where I found this little device called a Bit Booster. And the best way that I can describe a Bit Booster is that so it works with Bitcoin and it works in accumulating Bitcoin. But if you think about if you loved apples and you wanted to be able to eat apples until the cows come home, you would go down to Woolies, you'd buy an apple, so you'd swap your money for an apple, okay, and then you'd eat it, and then the next day you'd need another apple, so you have to go and buy another apple. But the smart way to do it would be to actually plant an apple tree in your backyard. So that when you wanted another apple, you go down to your backyard, you grab an apple off the tree. You don't have to keep going to Woolies. You don't have to keep paying money to get more apples. It's growing in your backyard. Bit boosters are like that with Bitcoin. It's a little device, and I've got a little picture of one. Let me see if I can bring this up so that you can see it. There you go. It's this tiny little thing. But what it is, it's like having an apple tree in your backyard that grows Bitcoin instead of apples. Okay, it's an incredible little piece of technology. And so what that does is every single day you are accumulating Bitcoin. So at the end of 12 months, in the traditional sense, if you spend $1,000 and got some $1,000 worth of Bitcoin, you'd have 0.01. If Bitcoin's at $100,000, you'd have 0.01 of a Bitcoin. Okay. With a Bit Booster, you spend $1,000, you buy a Bit Booster at the end of the year, at the end of 12 months, because you're accumulating, right? You're growing apples every single day. You would have 0.029 of a Bit Boost of a Bitcoin at the end of 12 months. The same amount of time, but because you're accumulating it every day, you have more quantity. And the quantity is what's important here. And it does that year on year on year. So that at the end of the next year, you'd have I think it's 0.59. So, it continues to grow up. And unless you have forked out more money in the traditional way, you would still have your 0.01 Bitcoin that you bought in the traditional sense. I'm hoping this is making sense. It's at the very least, I really want you guys to understand that there are options, there are alternatives, there are ways of doing things where you can minimize your risk. So the outlay is very low, but you are still growing it. And the reason why I'm saying it's important that you want to grow your Bitcoin Bitcoin store, your quantity, is because of what they're forecasting that Bitcoin is going to do. Now, obviously, nobody knows exactly what it's going to do, but because of its increased adoptability, and because it's becoming so more common, the it's like digital gold because it's going to increase in value. There's more interest in it. There's more people wanting it. They're predicting that the price of one single Bitcoin by 2030, which is only 5 years away, can be anything from 250,000 to 3.8 million. All right, and then that's a huge range. And obviously, nobody actually knows what's going to happen. But what if it does? What if it does get up there? What if it is more and more and more in the value? You want to own as much Bitcoin as you possibly can. And these bit boosters are one way that you can do that is quite simple. And what I'm doing with my family is that we are not just buying a single bit booster, we're getting multiple bit boosters. We're having the whole apple orchard going on here because I want to be able to not only look after Matt and I and be able to retire, I want to be able to have something for our children as well. Now, the kids are, Izzy's going to be 19, Jack's going to be 18 this year, Jaden's going to be 16. And the plan was when they were born that we would create an account for them to put money into so that, when they're older, they would have this nice little nest egg. And that never happened. Okay. And I see these bit boosters getting one in their names as well, or multiple in their names, is a way that they're going to be able to have that helping hand to be able to buy a house. Because right now, God knows how they're ever going to buy a house and get out of our house. Okay. But this is how I see we'll be able to give them that little bit of a helping hand as well. So I'm going to wrap it up there. I hope this has at least given you a little bit of curiosity around it, okay? And that is really my aim, to get people to think, to see it differently and to see it for what it is, not what they have maybe their perception is because they've been listening to the wrong people and they've been listening to the media who like to dramatize things. If you do have questions around this, I really do invite you to reach out to me. You can send me a DM. You can ask questions in the comments, whatever it is that you want to do, just to get that clarity. And like I said right at the beginning, whether you do this or not that's a different question. It's all about at least educating yourself and making your decision to yes or no based on the facts and not on fear. Okay, and then take that and do, because like I said, there are many, 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 many ways you can get into crypto and specifically Bitcoin. Find the way that works for you. This is one way. It works amazingly for me, and that's it. All right. Okay, everyone, I am going to stop now. I hope that has made sense. I'll leave you with a quote from Robert Kiyosaki. And he said, financial freedom is freedom from fear. Okay. Have an amazing day, and I will see you later.